So what if the ultimate life hack for surviving our totally chaotic, hyperproductive modern world was like literally doing nothing?
I mean, just absolutely nothing at all.
Right, exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. Today we are looking at this roughly 2,500-year-old text that basically argues your perfectly packed calendar and, your endless hustle and this obsession you have with learning more are exactly what's making you miserable.
It really flips the script on everything we were taught, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. We're plunging into the Tao Te King, which is often considered the foundational text of Taoism. And our mission for this deep dive is to really figure out why a cryptic, deliberately vague manuscript remains one of the most translated and influential books in human history.
Yeah, and we're definitely not going to get bogged down in dry academic debates today.
No, please no. We want to extract the core insights of a guidebook that, completely challenges how we are supposed to live.
It is a radical departure from how we typically operate, for sure. Because, the fundamental equation of modern life is basically that more information equals more competence.
Right. We want the step-by-step instructions.
Exactly. We want a map, but the Tao Te Ching refuses to give you a map. So to understand how to apply it, we first have to grapple with its foundational concept, which is the Tao, translating to the way.
But even giving it a name is kind of a trap.
Oh, absolutely a trap. Because the eternal Tao is described as the unnameable origin of all existence. It's invisible, it's inaudible, and totally incomprehensible, and yet, it permeates literally everything.
Which is wild because it's framed in the text as one of the four great forces of the universe, standing right alongside the human, the earth, and heaven.
Yeah, but it behaves completely differently than we expect the force to behave.
Right, because human rulers or, earthly forces usually strive for dominance, right? They want to be seen.
Yeah, they want statues built of them. But the Tao doesn't strive for power or greatness. It just is. And because of this underlying nature of reality, Lao Tse, who is the traditional, though, historically debated author of the text, was deeply skeptical of human knowledge.
And our obsession with absolute truths.
Exactly. He fundamentally distrusted our ability to neatly categorize the universe into rigid little boxes.
Which honestly explains why there is no list of, thou shalt and thou shalt nots in this book.
Right, because a rigid law assumes you actually have the universe figured out.
Right, and instead Lao Tse just gives us riddles and contradictions. I feel like he wants to short-circuit that analytical, categorizing part of your brain.
Yeah, to force you to actually stop and think. And one of the most profound shifts in perspective he offers to achieve that is this concept of nothingness.
The power of the void.
Exactly, the void. We constantly focus on what is tangibly there, the material, the substance. But the text points out that we completely ignore the emptiness that actually gives a thing its utility.
Like that brilliant analogy about a house. You build a house out of solid walls, but the house is only livable because of the empty spaces.
Doors and the windows.
Right. If you just have solid walls, you don't have a house, you literally just have a giant brick of clay.
A very useless brick, yeah.
Or, think about a bowl. A bowl is only useful because of its hollow interior. So what is not there is precisely what gives the object its actual value.
And we are just so conditioned to be obsessed with substance. We want to fill every single space. But Lao Tse is telling us that the void isn't something to be feared or filled. The empty space is actually the source of all potential.
It makes me think about how we treat our time, especially our modern calendars. You look at your week, and if every single hour is blocked off with meetings, tasks, networking, social events, society basically tells you that you are productive and important.
Oh, yeah. We highly value the solid blocks.
Right. But if we apply this philosophy, the empty space in your calendar, those hours where absolutely nothing is scheduled, that is the hollow part of the bowl.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, because that is where actual spontaneity and creativity and real living happen. A fully packed bowl literally can't hold anything new.
And that leads directly to the core of how a person is actually supposed to navigate daily life, according to this text. If emptiness and the unknown are the ultimate utility, our actions should probably reflect that.
And the mechanism for this is wu wei, right?
Yes, wu wei, which roughly translates to non-action.
Okay, I have to say, non-action sounds incredibly appealing if it means I can just sit on the couch and binge watch television while the universe sorts itself out.
Yeah, it is a very tempting interpretation.
Yeah.
But non-action is less about physical laziness and much more about just not forcing outcomes.
So moving with the natural flow of things rather than trying to micromanage the universe.
Exactly. Think of it like swimming. If you get caught in a rip current, Your immediate instinct is to swim as hard as you can directly against it, right back to shore.
Which is how people drown.
All right, you will exhaust yourself and you will drown. So wu wei is the act of swimming parallel to the shore, just riding the current until it naturally releases you.
Yeah.
You basically give up artificial desires, you stop interfering, and you return to a state of simplicity.
And to help cultivate that mindset, the philosophy outlines these 3 treasures that everyone should guard.
Yeah, these are crucial.
First is compassion, which brings courage. Second is frugality, which brings generosity. And third is giving up fame and status, which is supposedly what allows someone to truly lead.
Right.
But I gotta say, those pair-ups feel totally backward at first glance. We usually think you need to be really tough and hardened to be brave, or incredibly wealthy to be generous.
They do seem paradoxical, but unpacking the mechanism behind those treasures reveals exactly why they work. So take frugality bringing generosity.
Okay.
If you are constantly anxious about acquiring the next luxury car or climbing the corporate ladder or defending a massive hoard of wealth, your mental bandwidth and your resources are entirely consumed by fear.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You can only truly give freely and without strings attached when you stop feeling like you never have enough. So frugality basically frees your mind from scarcity.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the same goes for compassion bringing courage. I mean, if you deeply empathize with someone else, you will face dangers to protect them that you would absolutely never face just for your own ego.
That is so true. And this actually ties into a broader observation the text makes about biology and nature. Like, humans and plants are soft, delicate, and yielding when they are young and full of life.
Right. But in death, a body or a branch becomes rigid, hard, and stiff.
Exactly. Rigidity is a literal symptom of death, while softness is a symptom of life.
And the ultimate metaphor for this living softness in the text is water. I mean, water is the most yielding substance on Earth. You can't grasp it, you can't break it.
But over time, it can hollow out and move solid, unyielding rock.
The soft overcomes the hard. So because of this, the ideal state for a human being is to become what is called the uncarved block of wood.
The uncarved block.
Yeah. Simple, modest, and totally free of artificial decoration or pretense.
Okay, wait. If I just become an uncarved block and I practice non-action, aren't I just basically becoming a doormat?
That is the big question.
Like, how do I actually survive in a corporate environment or just a society full of very sharp, very carved people who are perfectly willing to walk all over me?
It is totally the most common friction point people have with this philosophy. But being an uncarved block does not mean being devoid of agency. The text is actually redefining what strength really is.
Okay, how so?
True strength doesn't come from dominating others. It comes from overcoming yourself. So think about how water fights.
How water fights?
Yeah. If you punch a river, you don't hurt the river, you just exhaust your own arm.
That is a great visual.
Right. Water simply flows around your fist and then immediately fills the space you leave behind. That is what Lao Tse means by softness being a tactical advantage.
So you aren't yielding because you're weak.
Exactly. You are yielding to let your opponent expend all their aggressive energy fighting the current, while you simply adapt to the shape of the terrain. You don't break because you know how to bend.
Okay, I can totally see how that profound, adaptable peacefulness works for an individual. It sounds amazing for personal mental health.
Oh, for sure.
But things get incredibly complicated when we try to scale this up, right? Applying these concepts to society, to law, and to politics seems like a recipe for total anarchy.
It definitely forces a radical reevaluation of civilization itself. I mean, the argument presented is highly counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It basically says morality, ethics, and strict laws only exist because society has lost the way.
Wait, so having laws on the books is actually a sign of societal failure?
Yeah, consider the underlying logic. You don't need a massive legal framework mandating that people trust each other if trust is already the natural baseline of your community.
Oh, I see.
The very presence of strict moral codes, complex laws, and intense policing is a symptom that organic harmony and natural virtue have completely broken down. It's like a withered, artificial form of virtue that only creates more confusion.
And the claim goes even further, right? Suggesting that strict prohibitions actually make people poorer and more deceitful.
Yes, absolutely.
The kicker for me is that crime only happens because rulers make certain things desirable. Like, if the leadership didn't hoard wealth, build lavish palaces and create this massive societal obsession with status, nobody would be tempted to steal in the first place.
It functions as this really striking critique of systemic inequality. Rulers who hoard treasures while the common people starve are literally categorized as no better than robbers themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, a wise leader operates exactly like the Tao. They remain entirely in the background. They stay humble. They do not micromanage the citizens, and they never, ever try to awe the public with displays of wealth or military might.
So if a ruler truly practices non-action, the people just naturally self-organize and live peacefully.
That's the idea, yeah.
But then, the text takes this political theory to a place that feels deeply provocative today, because it suggests that the ideal society is one where the people are kept ignorant and content in small, simple villages.
Yeah, that part is definitely controversial.
Like, they shouldn't be traveling far, they shouldn't be striving for technological advancements. Ponder that for a second. Is this advice to keep people, quote-unquote, dumb, just a form of ancient authoritarian control?
Like a dictator saying, keep the peasants uneducated so they don't rebel.
Exactly. Or is it a genuine, compassionate plea for a stress-free, pre-industrial existence that's completely free from the toxic anxiety of always wanting more?
That specific tension is one of the most heavily debated aspects among scholars.
I bet.
But when you look at the broader context of Lao Tzu's deep skepticism toward human knowledge, which he viewed mostly as cunning, ambition, and the creation of artificial desires, it aligns much more with the compassionate plea.
So ignorant in this translation doesn't actually mean stupid.
Right, it means unburdened by the relentless, agonizing pursuit of status and complex technology that disrupts your inner peace. It's basically the ancient equivalent of wanting to go off-grid and delete all your social media.
I think we all feel that urge sometime.
Oh, completely. However, you can absolutely see how a ruling class could effortlessly weaponize that philosophy to suppress a population.
It's just wild that a text so obsessed with yielding to nature and letting go of control could ever be seen as a tool for suppression.
Yeah, the irony is thick.
But, while Lao Tzu is generally a master of vague interpretation and mystical flexibility, there is one area where he completely drops the chill persona and draws a very hard line in the sand.
Well, yes, the anti-war stance.
Right.
It is a jarring structural anomaly across the 81 sections of the text. When he's discussing the cosmos or the flow of daily life, the language is entirely riddles and metaphors.
Very flowy.
Very flowy. But when the topic turns to violence, weapons, and war, the tone shifts dramatically. The detachment just vanishes. The author becomes passionate, angry, and absolutely rigid.
Weapons are flat out called instruments of evil that are hated by all creatures.
Yes.
And it says a wise person only uses violence as an absolute last resort, and you must never, ever initiate an attack.
And even when you are forced to defend yourself, which is, acknowledges the tragic possibility, the psychological pivot required afterward is profound.
Because if you win a battle, you have still participated in the destruction of land and the severing of human lives.
Exactly. Therefore, a military victory must never be celebrated with parades, jubilation, or medals. It should be treated exactly like a funeral.
A victory parade is just a funeral procession in disguise. That imagery is incredibly heavy.
It really is.
You mourn the victims, even the ones on the other side, rather than cheering for your own dominance. And this absolute reverence for life extends directly to the justice system, too, specifically this explicit rejection of the death penalty.
Yeah, the underlying mechanic there is tied back to the natural cosmic order we were talking about earlier. Bringing death is the sole jurisdiction of a natural power.
So when a human government decides to execute a criminal, they are arrogantly usurping a power that does not belong to them.
Exactly. They are trying to play the role of the cosmos. The text says, for a human to wield the power of death is like a clumsy apprentice trying to use a master carpenter's tools. They're only going to cut their own hands off.
Because it goes entirely against the principle of non-action.
Precisely.
Reflecting on the era when this was written makes that stance just mind-blowing. We are talking about a time of ancient warlords, brutal conquests, and the bloody consolidation of feudal states. And here is a philosopher advocating for a radical, empathetic pacifism that feels remarkably modern.
Yeah, the historical context of the 6th to 4th centuries BC is really the crucible for all of this. Yeah. China was undergoing massive societal upheaval.
The Warring States period, right?
right? The old feudal systems were collapsing. You had endless violence as small kingdoms fought for dominance, while simultaneously a new middle class was rising.
So everyone was desperately looking for philosophical frameworks to just make sense of the chaos and figure out how society should be reorganized.
Exactly. Which naturally brings us to the great rival of the Tao Te King, the teachings of Confucius.
They were basically competing blueprints for civilization.
Very much so. Confucius focused entirely on worldly ethics, strict societal rules, filial piety, and rigid moral codes.
Very structured.
Highly structured and practical. It was essentially a manual for building a functional, orderly bureaucracy. Lao Tse offered the exact opposite.
So if Confucius was the human resources manual for society, Lao Tse was the manual for throwing the HR rulebook out the window and just walking into the forest.
That is a perfect way to put it, honestly.
And that anti-establishment streak really explains its massive global footprint, because it didn't just stay in a misty Chinese valley.
No, not at all.
It formed the bedrock of the Taoist religion, but it also heavily influenced Chan Buddhism, which eventually became Zen Buddhism. The direct line from the Tao Te Ching's focus on stillness and immediate, unforced experience straight into Zen meditation practices is unmistakable.
And the philosophy also resonated deeply in the West. I mean, Christian theologians have spent decades mapping the striking parallels between the Tao Te Ching and the New Testament.
Like the preference for the weak over the strong.
Exactly. Both texts exhibit a profound countercultural preference for the weak, the gentle, and the marginalized over the strong, the wealthy, and the rigid.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah, the Taoist mandate for universal compassion really mirrors the Christian concept of unconditional love.
And beyond organized religion, the text has historically served as the ultimate anthem for the outsider. For the dropout. For the person who looks at the suffocating structures of society and says, no thank you.
It offers profound validation for the choice to step away. It reassures you that by refusing to participate in the exhausting rat race for power, wealth, and carved wood status, you aren't a failure.
Right.
You're actually aligning yourself with the fundamental, quiet truth of the universe.
And that quiet truth gave people very loud, very tangible courage during some of the darkest chapters of modern history. In the 20th century, the Tao Te Ching was actively used by the White Rose, which was the famous anti-Nazi resistance group in Germany.
Oh, wow, yes.
They literally quoted Lao Tse in their underground leaflets, using his words on the inevitable collapse of rigid, aggressive power to inspire the fight against fascism.
That is incredible.
Right. It deeply inspired major writers like Elias Canetti and Peter Hanke, and Bertolt Brecht even wrote a famous poem about Lao Tse taking the text into exile. The journey of this book is just staggering, from a mystical guide for inner peace to a source of literal life-or-death courage for European anti-fascists standing up to Hitler.
It really just proves the universal mechanics of power and ego. I mean, whether you're dealing with a toxic boss, an overbearing government, or a global catastrophe, the human tendency to over-control and the urgent need for yielding stillness remains exactly the same.
It really does. So bringing all of this together, the Tao Te Ching is basically a masterclass in the power of less. It teaches us that less action, less desire, less rigidity, and absolutely less violence all lead to a much deeper alignment with the natural flow of the universe.
It is the ultimate antidote to our modern instinct to always do more.
It challenges us to embrace the uncarved block, right? To appreciate the utility of empty spaces and to realize that sometimes yielding is the only way to actually overcome the obstacles in our way.
Beautifully said.
But, there's one final lingering thought we want to leave you with today. Even after thousands of years of scholarship, experts today still cannot agree on how to translate the central terms of the Tao Te Ching.
True. The language is so sparse and so open that it leads to endless, wildly different interpretations.
Right. So if the words are so vague that they can mean almost anything, is it possible that the Tao Te Ching isn't actually teaching us any specific facts at all? Perhaps it has survived all these centuries because it acts purely as a psychological mirror, a text where every culture, every generation, and every single reader just ends up seeing the exact wisdom they most desperately need to hear.
That is a fascinating thought.
So the next time you feel overwhelmed by the pressure to know everything and do everything, remember the empty bowl. The real magic might just be found in having the courage to leave a little bit of empty space.